Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So happy it is 10 a.m. on Wednesday, May 20. We have made it this far, and this is Roma webinar number 7.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! And with me is
Susan Wilson from CEFS in Effingham.
so happy that you're all here with us today. Did I say my name? Did I identify myself? Christine Westerland, if you don't know my voice already.
Well, Christine, I have to tell you something. Last night I was talking to my husband about you, and I said something like, well, Christine Webinar said.
Christine, yes, Christine Webinar. I will take that on. Absolutely. I think that's probably how my coworkers think of me because I'm constantly talking about we need to do webinars. So you're all here with us today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes as we move forward. This webinar is being recorded. It will be made available on the ICA YouTube channel. So if you want to share it with your peers or view it later, we would encourage you to do just that. You are all in silent mode, but you have the opportunity to use your dashboard to ask questions or raise your hand, and we really would love to have some interaction.
Please do, right. Yeah. Please do raise your hand. Ask questions, make comments.
Yeah, we want
some information going here.
Absolutely, and I think the other thing that I'm going to add to that, I think that we are entering a time in which we're going to have to get really comfortable with communicating in this fashion, using these platforms, whether it's a webinar platform or other types of virtual connections. So use this as an opportunity to practice. We're a friendly crowd. We obviously make mistakes along the way. And so it's okay to practice with us. So just to put that out there for all of you. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
Breaking down silos and created linkages.
Yes, absolutely. And I have to give complete props for this presentation to Susan. She came up with the idea, which is brilliant because this is really what we need to talk about is breaking down these silos. And Roma really does give us that opportunity to kind of step back, understand our processes, and then see the value of internal collaborations at the agency. And speaking of collaboration, this is the DCEO ICA collaboration webinar series. We're grateful for their support in allowing us to continue this work with you all online, and we look forward to providing more and more information for you as we move forward. There we are. You've seen these faces before. Here we are again.
Like it or not.
Like it or not, yeah. Here we are. And just to remind all of you, Susan is both a Roma implementer and a Roma trainer. She's like the dynamic duo of Roma credentials. And I think that she brings such a lovely, unique perspective as both a practitioner and a teacher of Roma. And here's me, Christine, webinar. I'm a master trainer. I've been at this since, oh golly, almost 20 years now. And it is always a learning process. I value Roma. I use Roma, not outside, even outside of ICA, in other volunteer work that I do. And I can tell you that this is something that really it matters and it works.
That's because Roma isn't an extra task you have to do just if you work for CSBG. Roma is a concept of doing things in an organized and efficient and in an organized and efficient way, and then tooting your horn about it. Because by golly, people should know what you do.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it, right? It's the tooting the horn that we're really bad at. And here's an opportunity for us to really toot our horn. And the tooting of the horn should always be focused on telling that story of what happened, right? Really diving into those outcomes. People want to know. I don't know about you. I know Susan and I are both voracious readers, and we want to have that story. We want that story to have an ending, and that's what the outcomes really help us understand. All right. As we typically do, as we launch this webinar today, we like to say together the promise of community action. So you may do it along with us or silently, but let's remind ourselves of what our promise is. That community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So let's kind of double down on that promise of community action and talk about organizational silos.
So what are organizational silos? Well, silos are storage facilities. Like farm silos, organizational silos have a deep, solid foundation, but they have no windows and they have limited points of entry. But organizational silos, you've probably heard breaking down silos, they're not physical structures, they are a mindset.
Yeah, and Susan, I will just say that when I came to Community Action back in 2001, and one of the first presentations I went to was about silos, and being a good farm girl from downstate Illinois, I'm like, well, duh, silos, you keep corn in them. It didn't hurt also that that was my father's occupation, that he sold and built silos for farmers.
So you're very familiar with silos.
So I'm very familiar with silos. So it is just that, it is a mindset. I had to make that big adjustment in thinking, and I'm so happy that I have had the opportunity to do that, because yeah, it is a way that you view and think about how everything functions together.
Silos are good on the farm. They're not so good in a community action agency.
Exactly. So kind of talking a little bit more about what are these silos. Silos really let you believe that if you do your assigned tasks at your assigned desk and meet your assigned deadlines, then you're successful in carrying out your agency's mission, right? So you live within the walls of that silo. But silos let you believe that's not my job. Silos let you believe things are good enough. And that's really true. When you have that, I guess maybe you can make a comparison by saying you have tunnel vision when you work in a silo.
It's a bit of a mixed metaphor, but it fits.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Tunnel vision in a silo, yeah.
Yeah.
So then what's the problem with silos? Well, they foster mistrust, because I do my things my way, you do your things your way, and your way might or might not be as good as mine. They disrupt the flow of information. They degrade mission effectiveness. And when we come to your agency and train you on ROMA, we discuss mission effectiveness and how important it is to have that goal, to have your eyes towards the goal. They obstruct the opportunities of grants, volunteers, and public relations, and they hinder morale.
Absolutely. I think these are all, this is a good list to consider when you are considering what is the problem with silos, because we all get comfortable in our own silo of life, right? But the number one thing is, at least from my perspective, is that it's that mistrust that you don't want at the agency. You want everybody to be working together in a collaborative atmosphere. And so this is where the flow of information becomes so important, that connection to mission. And everyone wants to have good morale. I mean, that's the reason people love coming to work every day, is because, people get along and you're valued.
And I don't want to send the wrong message. If you run a good program, more power to you. And your identity of a good program is important. But there's more to it than that. We work together. We all have the same, you all work under the same mission statement for the agency.
Absolutely. So what can we do then to kind of begin thinking how we can bust down those silos? Well, you can begin by cross-department and team building projects, and that is always a great way to connect. I absolutely adore team collaboration. It makes me happy. It makes my heart happy, and I get to see my colleagues from a very different lens and a deeper lens. Have fewer departmental meetings and more selected staff collaborations to meet agency-wide goals. And we're not saying stop having meetings, not at all, not by any stretch of the imagination. You need to meet, but it's also important that you think about doing it from a collaborative perspective. And also expect staff to attend interagency service provider meetings. That's a great way to build collaborations outside the walls of the agency.
Yeah, we'll talk more about working together with other agencies and other programs because we should have a unified vision of reducing the effects of poverty in your community. So get with the other programs and other agencies that do that. Work together, and we'll see later how much that can benefit everybody.
Yeah, and I think what would be a really cool thing to consider at one of those meetings, we'll talk about it, is to kind of everybody pull out their mission statement and see where you have areas of intersections.
Good point.
So, wait, is this you or me?
This is me. What can we do? Continued. Well, create Roma logic models, and shameless plug again, when we come to your agency, we will create logic models that will clarify the flow of data and assist in identifying duplications or gaps, because duplications cost you money and gaps cost the community opportunities. Email weekly or monthly newsletters. This is something CEFS does. We get an email highlighting one of our programs like Meals on Wheels or Early Head Start, and we get to know what they're doing, because I don't want to, I'm actually in a separate building than most of the other services that we provide, and so it really helps me know, and then I can direct customers, clients, adult learners to the other programs because I know what they offer. So that's a really good way to highlight specific staff or individual programs, services that you offer as a whole, so that everyone in the agency is aware of what everyone else is doing. The next one is not an easy thing to solve, Christine, but if we had common data systems for Head Start and LIHEAP and CSBG programs, if we had program processes and reporting forms that were that worked together, so things were not dual entried, or so we can locate information from one client from one program into another one, that would really help with breaking down the silos. I know that that's not an easy thing. I know people have worked on it. I know nobody has the magic wand, or they would have done it by now, but it would really benefit to have common data systems and input processes.
I totally.
You have something to say about that, I think.
Yes, and not to belabor this, but I will for just a moment. Part of the issues that follow this, or that add to this, I should say, is because we're dealing with multiple funding streams. LIHEAP, is its original source is from the Department of Energy, the Federal Department of Energy. Same way with weatherization. CSBG comes from Health and Human Services. So, and aging funding comes from aging, transportation funding comes from transportation, so on and so forth. And so because of their approaches to this funding, their missions are slightly different. And so that's why we see this kind of this, what do I want to call it? Kind of this this brew of different types of systems that we have to work in and out of. There are some commonalities in these systems, absolutely, but we have to consider common data systems, speaking common language when we're collecting data, so we can understand what our outcomes are. One thing that I will just mention in passing, and you'll probably hear more about this as we move forward, is that one thing that ICA is planning on doing this year is to really examine data systems that agencies are using and to make some recommendations on how to perhaps streamline or marry some of these processes, so we can have a better opportunity to really understand what our outcomes are and to improve our reporting, and honestly and really to tell our story of success.
I think probably the biggest issue for that is funding, because I know if I go to Amazon to order something, if they don't have it, they say, well, we can send it to you from this supplier, Or then if I look at, let's say, a leather recliner, for the next week, I get pop-up ads on leather recliners. So I think the ability to communicate has to be absolutely already available. But I don't think we have as much money in community action as Amazon does
Well,
in their budget.
and you're absolutely right, and that's the key. That and I've made my joke at many trainings before. I'll say it one more time: community action underfunded since 1964.
Very
Um,
good.
and yeah, and that is a part of the truth that we have to live with. However, community action is very innovative and can find ways to make things happen that are amazing and maybe a little mysterious, but actually amazing, that really do tell our story. So I think there are many opportunities for innovation out there for us. So continuing kind of this, what can we do? So this is really where to encourage involvement. You got to you got to dive deep into this work. A staff could, for example, volunteer at other agencies or programs. We see that happening quite a bit. Belong to professional or associations. That's how you meet your peers. You hear ideas. You collaborate. I know that I know Susan's actively involved. I serve on the. You've heard me say this, the United Way Visioning Council. What a great way. That is such a rich conversation. I look so forward to going to those meetings because I really learn more, not only about the community in which I live, but more about how other organizations are really diving into outcomes. And to me, that is so valuable.
And I think, too, you learn more from talking to the people than you do from what's on the agenda.
Oh, yes, by all means. It's it's that parking lot conversation that sometimes reaps the highest reward. So yes, it's those conversations and connecting that is so important. Also, speak at local luncheons. I mean, there's Chamber of Commerce's, there's Rotary breakfast, there's I know there's the junior leagues. I'm trying to think of all the places that I've been had the opportunity to speak. I spoke at the Kiwanis just I, it seems like it was a year ago, but it was actually just in February. So again, get yourself out there and talk. Um, Join the boards of other nonprofits like libraries, public transportation, or hospital boards. There's a myriad of boards out there that really want your input and your participation, and they want to hear more from you. And that's where you're building, again, that beautiful external collaboration, again, really diving deeper into that opportunity to explore outcomes.
All right, what else can we do? Well, provide for staff socialization time, whether it's Tuesday tacos or the summer barbecue, something where that people can get together without the stress of the jobs, but still, respect the coworkers. Host lunch and learns about other services in the community. Bring in speakers. Bring in a speaker from Catholic Charities or from United Way or from Child Protective Services, whoever would benefit your agency or the program that has the speakers. Bring them in. It's another way, a little less formal. A lunch and learn is not as formal as a big meeting. And then, of course, if you provide lunch, you have a captive audience. Adjust departmental goals and metrics to align with those of other departments and agencies as appropriate. Unfortunately, sometimes there is friction. Well, how come Head Start gets to whatever? Or why doesn't LIHEAP have to whatever? Well, if you make things as equal, and sometimes fair doesn't mean equal, because we do run different programs. But if you make things as equal or as fair as you can, so that the people realize that if it's different, it's for a good reason, then it can reduce some of that friction.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. And again, that is the beauty of community action, is that we have that opportunity to bring in all these different funding sources, because these are programs that assist people who experience poverty. And so there are going to be different criterias for training and for transportation, buying vehicles, going to conferences. So that will vary from program to program. But at the end of the day, that unifier is really the mission of the organization. And that's where everyone at the agency is following that mission. That is that guiding statement. What else can we do? Well, I think one of the strongest things, the most proactive thing that you could do is share needs assessments information among programs and agencies. Many organizations do needs assessments. Hospitals are doing so much more, and doctors' offices are really diving into doing needs assessments so they can prepare, and respond to the conditions in their community. So really help, identify those places. So, there's organizations like Catholic Charities, United Way, food banks, colleges, libraries, whoever shares your vision. Do you need to create a unified vision? That might be something that, you may want to take at a higher level. Again, that's where you're doing much of the same. You're probably working with many of the same individuals that you see at the Community Action Agency are also receiving services from other organizations. So why not collaborate and build that unified approach to serving individuals who are in need in your community?
All right, but there might be some barriers we'll need to cross. One of the things you might hear is, well, we've always done it that way, or I've been doing it that way ever since I got hired. And I saw somewhere where someone responded, well, then it's time to barbecue some sacred cows, which is a little harsh maybe, but it's Ken Crawford, who was the Teotopolis High School basketball coach for many years, um, said that this town is so steeped in tradition that they're still willing to sacrifice the virgin the first of the year, and that's not right. Just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean you should do it that way. You might hear, I don't want to lose my grant, and I don't blame you, because we need the money. But if you don't get that grant, what can you gain? And more importantly, what can your customers gain if you work together and maybe shift some of the grants? You mean I have to talk to Mary in accounting? Well, yeah, you do, because we work together, we have a common goal, and you do need to communicate with other people and share what's going on, share your problems, share your goals, share your successes, and toot your own horn.
Yeah, I think it's that horn tooting that we are probably not as good at as we should be. So this is an opportunity to really toot your own horn. When you think about it, that's a barrier that you have to cross too. Also, Susan, we've had a comment come in from Melissa at Kendall Grundy. She has written, we have an interagency meeting every month. Lately, we have been doing them remotely still, and the agencies are helping me create the COVID needs assessment as we speak. Woohoo, that's exciting. Thank
That is
goodness.
really exciting.
Yeah, isn't that great? Thank goodness we built the interagency group a long time ago, so we are all helping one another. That's a great, thank you, Melissa, for sharing that. And that is such a beautiful example on how this is a time in which really you have to rely on those community connections that you've made. So you can, this is how you're going to gather some really deep information for your needs assessment that will inform your community action plan. I know that all of you, all the agencies have been asked to do that with the CARES Act funding. So this is a great way. Don't think that you're not in this all by yourself. You have many out there, willing partners that are willing to provide input into what it is you need to do.
I am also president of our community action, I'm sorry, of our community service providers. And what we did, we created a spreadsheet with all of our participants, and then what services they're still providing and how clients can access those services. Because some of them are shut down completely, some can do things via email or phone calls, some are still meeting face-to-face because sometimes your clients need to be face-to-face. And so that's something we can share. So being part of your service providers meetings really is a way, again, to toot your own horn. It's a way to realize where else you can refer your clients. And it also helps you identify duplications and gaps in services.
Yeah, and those great examples. And remember, we just don't meet to meet, right? You meet because it's important to really make those connections and to keep those connections fresh and viable. So some other barriers that we really need to consider, sometimes there is that click mentality, and let's face it, it happens. The note there said that we are not in high school anymore, and that's very true. But sometimes clicks do just naturally occur. People may have similarities, or whether it's interests or an outlook, but it is something that you have to fight. Honestly, we want to ensure that at the agency that that you're going to work together across the entire agency, not just in with 2 or 3 special people that get you. And I don't mean to say anything negative about that at all. I totally understand it. But again, be very conscious that does happen. We also have to have, we know that we're challenged by separate databases and software limitations. As I think Susan said earlier, we are not Amazon, so we don't have Jeff Bezos billions of dollars to have the best software developed exclusively for community action. I mean, we do have some of that, but it's not nearly as robust as we would like it to be. And so that's why many of you I know have put together workarounds or tricks on how to do your data collection so you can find those unduplicated numbers. But again, we realize this is a long-term goal that really does need to be addressed. And I know that there are actions I know that there's a conversation, I should say, that is looking at long-term outcomes or long-term solutions to that, excuse me. And again, time. That's let's face it, we always need more time to do things. But I think the other piece of it is that we have become accustomed in community action that we are rapid response. We certainly are experiencing that now. And so time is not always on our side. Time is a luxury, but we also know that because we're providing an immediate response, it's because we know that people who experience poverty need our help now, not in 2 weeks, not in a month. They need our help now.
But how can we all benefit? If we have fewer silos, if we have more linkages, we can identify a community-driven vision. We can provide a bigger picture of how we can assist our community, and we can recognize duplications of services. And that's been brought up a lot, but you know what? It really is a waste of resources if you and 2 other agencies provide food banks, and it would be more streamlined, it would be more efficient if you went down to 1. Now, I don't know. It depends on your community, depends on your agency, but it is something to look at, something to evaluate, something to assess whether the duplication of services is necessary or if it can be done more efficiently.
Yeah, I think some communities have actually been able to pull this off. But how did that happen? Well, first of all, everybody had to drop their baggage outside the door before they walked in. They were able to commit very quickly to what a common vision was, and then they were able then to work towards elements of that vision in collaboration with one another. But again, we understand, organizations sometimes carry a political connotation, if you will, and so there are obstacles, but this can be done. You can identify that community-driven vision. That's called collective impact. That's a phrase that actually shows up in the community action organizational standards, and it's something to consider. Google it if you get an opportunity. There's some interesting what do I want to say? There are some interesting projects using collective impact that have happened all over the country, and would really encourage you to take a look at that if you have the time and the opportunity.
You're up.
Yes, yes, I am. Thank you, Susan. So how can you again go, kind of digging deeper into these benefits then, how is it that we can unify collaboration? And you say, well, isn't that what collaboration is? It is. It is a unifying approach, but again, it's bringing to the collaboration table, if you will, that unified vision. What is it that we're trying to really look at? And that part of that is avoiding mission drift. You don't want to drift away from what it is that you're doing to accept funding from, the Colgate company to promote dental health. That may not align with your mission. You also want to think about building the agency's capacity to operate more efficiently and effectively. And I think that's a key piece, really looking at your processes that you have in place already. This is an opportunity to do it now because you've had to rethink how you provide services and how is it that we can build in some efficiencies and be innovative. And innovation isn't a big, hairy thing. Innovation could be a tweaker here or there. So you can really build those deeper collaborations and more linkages in your community.
And continuing, fewer silos and more linkages, reduce unfair assumptions about other programs or agencies. Being transparent really boosts morale and encourages working together. It can improve volunteer efficiency. If a volunteer wants to work with the elderly, well, if it is obvious which programs serve the elderly, and this volunteer can then go to the program or the agency that would do the most good, and she would know that because you work together and you're streamlined and you are efficient. And it can allow for informed decisions, again, by sharing your needs assessment, by tooting your own horn as to what works. We can allow for informed decisions about planning and about assessing what we've done.
Absolutely, and I love that we're still talking about horn tooting.
That is part of ROMA, actually. The reporting is.
That is. I think I skipped a slide here.
Let's see.
There it is. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Okay. So again, how can we all benefit? So really, we're trying to reduce the number of hands in the cookie jar of grants and donations. So again, that's understanding it's that internal collaboration, dropping those silo walls. We want to, and this is an internal issue, so reduce competition for other resources. If you're working in from the perspective is that we are united, we are connected, that way the agency is going to be stronger and it would reduce competition for other resources. And also it will increase your ability, your capacity to create linkages. That's one of the key pieces that you have to do. You have to write about that in your community action plan about your linkages and your ability to provide referrals. And so why not continue to look at expanding your capacity to do that rather than saying, well, they didn't really cooperate with us, so we're just going to drop them from our list. That does happen, don't get me wrong. But why did that happen? Really take the opportunity to investigate that. So you want to think about, again, that broader connection, again, keeping that mission at the top of your thinking and also using it as it's supporting your decision making.
So continuing, fewer silos and more linkages identify gaps in services. They build understanding among staff, among programs, among agencies, and they maximize social impact. And that is our purpose. That's our goal, to maximize social impact.
Absolutely.
So let's work more together and let's celebrate what each other can do. And when that overlaps, then let's streamline it, or let's make it as efficient as we can. And then if we see some need is not being met, then we can fill it in.
Yeah, and I think this whole dropping the silos is really makes the argument for bundled services, or
yes,
whatever you want to call it, whole family, 2Gen, whatever moniker we want to hang on it. This is something that we really need to shift our practices towards, is offering whole family approaches. And by dropping silos, that helps us move in that direction, because what we see, if you're taking a whole family approach, a bundled service approach, you're going to see individuals and families that come to your agency who are really have a deeper ability or the deeper capacity to move towards their goals by providing comprehensive services with just one intake. It reduces not only the time that they're spending with you, especially if they have jobs and other commitments they need to get to, but it also would reduce the amount of connection. But you're not going from this intake worker to that intake worker, and you're going to hear perhaps slightly different or understand slightly different what their needs are, and you need to build cohesion with that individual, that family that comes to the community action agency seeking assistance.
And continuing, fewer silos promote transparency. They create a culture of reciprocity. I help you, you help me, we work together, we make a greater benefit. It reduces any mentality of superiority among departments and agencies. I hate to say that happens, but some people think that, well, that program doesn't do it as well as I do, or that agency it might not be as effective as another one. But if it's all transparent, if we know what each other is doing, then it reduces just kind of that, either critical factor or snob factor. It can ensure that each department is contributing to the vision. We, really, to put it in a nutshell, just work together.
Right.
Quite simply.
Quite simply, yes. And remember, each and every one, every member of the agency staff brings special talents to
Yes.
their work, and to really hone in on those talents. What you have a passion for. That's really, I think, the key piece of this as well, is to do, perhaps you need to do an assessment, a strengths assessment, or there's the strength finder. To really look at and hone in what it is you're good at. We've done, we do, we did what's your color? That was an assessment that was done several years ago.
Yes, I remember that.
What type of animal are you? Myers-Briggs obviously comes up in these sorts of conversations, but I think it really is an opportunity to, again, evaluate yourself and your colleagues and consider what it is you do best and where is it that you thrive.
And really, this will make your program stronger.
Yes.
You can still maintain your identity, but then by being transparent and having your walls knocked down, it makes achieving the goal for everybody much easier.
Yes. And when you achieve a goal, that is one of the most satisfying things that could happen, is when you achieve a goal. So you want to really begin boosting your image as a professional coordinated agency, that there's good communication, people understand each other's programs, to the depth that they can, so they can be knowledgeable when sharing information. You also want to clarify which agency customers should contact. That's actually, you all do referrals. This is a great way to be very clear on who it is that you're connecting someone to. You also want employees to be heads up, not heads down, to focus on the goal, not the task. And that to me just brings up such a beautiful visual that, what is it? Brené Brown says, eyes open, hearts open wider. And that means that we're looking clearly and we're looking forward. And that means that we have to have our head up in order to do that.
Shameless plug for Roma training too. When we come to your agency, we will work on matrices, which sounds much scarier than it is, but it's a chart that shows, it labels and shows and plans and organizes and reveals the different steps, the different changes over time, the different abilities of families to rise up above poverty and its effects. But it can't be done alone. Just giving them a box of food won't do it. Just giving them some job training might not do it alone. Giving them a rent payment isn't enough. Working together, and then the matrices that we create shows how the steps of different services over time really produces the best long-term effects of stopping generational poverty or just poverty for that family alone. So please, when we can meet face to face, If you have not yet been trained in Roma, have me or Christine, or there are several other ones. How many trainers are in Illinois? 6?
We have 6. Yes.
There are 6 of us who would love to come to your agency and present to. I would prefer to present to a program, but I would present to your agency as a whole to help you understand how Roma is not an interruption of your work, but a clarification of it.
That's very true, and just to kind of give again another shout out to Susan. Susan is an implementer, and to me, this presentation on breaking down our silos really is the role of the Roma implementer at the agency. Is one of the roles of the Roma implementer is really looking at the agency from that broader scope, and then looking at it and how is it that we can do that inter office collaboration. That to me is a key piece of looking, because at the end of the day, you're going to be able to see what outcomes we have, how our families being impacted, who've received LIHEAP, who are enrolled in Head Start, who receive, assistance for job training or literacy or what have you, because you're seeing that from the global perspective. Well, Susan, we're at the end of another webinar.
We finished number 7, and I'm glad we had a good crowd today. I'm so glad you joined us. Feel free to contact us with any questions, comments, or requests for training. If you want any documents that we have, for example, a copy of a completed matrix, we're happy to provide whatever you need.
Yeah,
we're here to help.
Absolutely, we're here for you. We're hoping that this series helps deepen your knowledge of Roma, and we're just so happy that you're all with us today. And we'll be back next Wednesday to take on another aspect of Roma, to dive deeper into it. We haven't quite landed on what that is yet, but I'm sure we will within the next, say 5 or 6 minutes.
And so, it will be a good one.
It will be a good one, we promise that. It looks like we've got a question that has come in. Let me click on that. Just a couple of thanks. Bringing in. So yeah, thank you for sharing your appreciation. And let me just say, and Susan, you could chime in too, but how much we deeply appreciate the work that you're doing. We know that this is a difficult time. We know that this is a time for us in which we're doing a lot of self-examination, and hopefully you have learned from us the value of using Roma at your agency.
We look forward to seeing or talking with you next Wednesday and even more down the road.
Absolutely. So take good care, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, Susan.
Are we off the air?
I haven't ended yet. No.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.